Hey, this game came out, Rage 2. I was wondering how hard could it be to enjoy it. Now, I don't get a lot of games these days. I generally stick to a few I pick up on console and the occasional dilly-dally on my PC. Most of the time though, my time goes to Warframe. But who gives a hoot about that background information? Let's talk about the game. So overall beginnings, the tutorial does a semi-decent job of introducing some newbie to the mechanics and to the story at large. It does make me wish that these games came with a, yes, I've done this before, setting to skip crouching and running and, oh well, whatever. Anyways, seems like these guys, the Authority, want to take over everything. So, typical save the world story. They look like mechanized Nazis pretty much. You get to decide your gender, but that only serves for your voice, as most cutscenes are from your own perspective. But it's a nice touch. So then you get dumped into the greater world at large. You get introduced to ARCs, the Goon Squad, and everything else the Wasteland has to offer. You get a neat little vroom buggy with guns, and you can upgrade it, and then you can also pick up and collect more vehicles on the way by returning them to any town. You also get a little arena mode and races, and so far it's pretty standard to what you can get out of this kind of game, I think. Now before we get into the mechanics and powers and shootings and characters and all that jazz, I want to mention a few things about the world I like. The first one being the scrap. I love the scrap flavor text because with a minimal effort, they've put some neat variety in the game without bogging you down with a bunch of BS. Now in something like Fallout, when you collect scrap, it's a bunch of little stuff you gotta sort through and organize. You have uranium and steel and wood, yada yada, whatever. Sure, they have most of the stuff the real world has in it, but it's also messy. And that messiness can be great, but sometimes it can be detrimental in comparison to simple system. Rage is a simple system. Junk, which is worthless, explosives, chemicals, mechanicals, and electronics that you can use to build stuff. But see, the thing I really love is that they put all these tidbits into these little world items with creative flavor text. It's just a little thing that can get a giggle out of you, like toast with a face imprint or a single crusty sock. These little tidbits are just great, and I love them. The color is also really nice. Good reds, the splashes of pink, the nice royal blues, the green foliage and cacti, the explosions effects are great. There's so much color variety in the game. Even the Authority's big turret fucking things have these nice, beautiful purple and pink explosion effects, and they look fantastic. It really gives the world some nice pop and variety. On to the shooting. Pistol. You get a burst fire and a single shot when you're aiming down sights. What a creative little system. As far as damage, it seems to work pretty well. The upgrade path is alright, I didn't use it much. The best use for the pistol is breaking the little scrap boxes for cheap instead of trying to waste your time meleeing them constantly. I'll get to that later. The rifle is pretty serviceable, but honestly I pretty much abandoned it really quickly. It works, but it's not my favorite. It's a pretty standard weapon and nothing really all that special. It shoot bullet. It shoot bullet good. The shotgun. I've got a thing for shotguns in video games. Whether it's the Super Shotty in Doom, the various shotguns in the Call of Duties I've played, my success with a basic ass shotgun in this dumb game Combat Arms, to the several lovely pieces of work in Warframe. Some of my favorite things to play around with are shotguns. And this one is a fucking thing of beauty. So of course you got your buckshot, right? Fantastic. Works like a charm. It's got nice impact, it throws enemies, it strips their armor right the fuck off, but then you scope in and it melts all the buckshot into a single slug that hits like a truck. It's a dream come true. Now the range is a little but game balance. Who gives a shit? It's great. I love it. The rocket launcher, which honestly I just barely got, is certainly a good weapon for booping bosses on the snoot. You get a basic blast, and then you get homing micro rockets on top of that when you zoom in. The design of this little beastie is pretty good, and I'm sure with a few upgrades it'll be much easier to mess around with. Now there are certainly more weapons than what I've covered here in just this little tidbit, but I haven't gotten them yet. They come from various arcs that you find in the world map, and I've only played for a couple hours because I have a busy schedule. So this is what I got. This is what I got to tell you about. Explore and find the rest of them yourself. Powers are alright. I've unlocked a dash blast kind of thing that can target enemies, blows their armor off, sends them flying, and sometimes kills them. It's pretty fun to do. You also get a butt slam kind of thing, sort of like from Borderlands pre-sequel, but I haven't used it as much. It kind of puts you in the air, makes you a big target before you slam down and get this radio blast. I think it might be useful in some situations, maybe with those mutant things, but otherwise, I don't really use it that much so far. The various upgrade screens are pretty well managed. It did take me a moment to realize how exactly to advance the levels of guns and powers and stuff like that, but I got it after a few flips through the menus. I will say though that, at least on my standard PS4, flipping from one major menu area to the next has a bit too much lag, and you can't really flip right from one side of the menu clear to the other side without waiting for them to load individually. You also get 3 progress bars that you fill up by doing various tasks. It's color coded, so if you need a bit more on one bar, just look for the matching color. It's a little finicky, but that's pretty much the only experience system in the game, and I think it works. Alright, let's talk about NPCs. The enemies so far, I've done a handful of bosses and they've been pretty alright. The giant mutant creatures, they throw stuff at you, you dash to dodge it, you confuse them a little bit, you blow stuff up. It's pretty alright. Otherwise, the various grunts and bandits are pretty well done. They're like the mutants like to charge at you, the bandits like to shoot from afar, they hit grenades with a baseball bat at you. Pretty fun. I like to get a few different things to shoot. Some wildlife might have been nice to add in. The environment is a little bit bare without any kind of animals out there. And maybe everyone is just vegan, who knows? Hard to tell because everyone isn't telling you that they're vegan. Now to your main characters. You start out with Lily and her mom, who basically dies right away. Once you get the armor and you get woken up after getting knocked the fuck out, you ditch Lily. You just ditch her. She sends you out and that's it. Her and Walker have a decent dynamic at the start, and it sucks that you leave Vineland and there's nothing else for hours. There might be more later, but you can't even go back and talk to her about stuff because she just gives you the same dialogue line about finding the other 3 people. Your 3 amigos that you meet after you leave home are pretty neat though. You get an old bartender that gives you more weapon-oriented upgrades, a sassy lady mayor who gives you more engineering type stuff, including upgrades for your wing sticks, which is pretty nice, and a scientist that has what amounts to a living, walking wheelchair. It's pretty goofy, and I appreciate that. One thing I will say is there's a lot of gross out stuff. Mr. Scientist's drooling wheelchair, the mutants of all sorts, even a boss named Smeggy. There's a lot of gross shit in the game, and I kind of appreciate that. The wasteland is gonna be gross. Full stop. Now I've heard some complaints about the driving, and yeah, I get it. But the roads are basically just a suggestion of roads covered in dirt and gravel. So the fact that it's pretty loose doesn't bother me, and I adapted to it pretty quickly. The few car combat sections I've come across have been decent, and plowing some goon off the road is a joy explosion of blood. And hey, if you hate the driving that much, later on you actually get this little thing called the Icarus. It's like a personal drone that you get to fly around and transport yourself to wherever you want to. Finding stuff in the game can be a bit of a pain. It does make me wish for a proper mini-map. The compass is decent and it works, but when it comes to stuff like the mutant pods, it is really lacking. The crates and arc chests are also a bit of a sticking point. You can certainly get stuck trying to find them, but you can always go back with a radar style upgrade to find them. I don't know how completely necessary they all are in the grand scheme of things, but there's some upgrade paths that help you out with a bunch of that stuff. Overall, I'd say that this game is pretty easy to enjoy. It certainly put a few smiles on my face. I think your personal mileage may vary depending on how many of these open world sandbox things you've played before. If you've played a bunch, it's probably a worn out concept for you. If they're not your usual fare, I'd say that Rage 2 might be a good step away from your usual shindig. Tore me straight out of Warframe for a few days, so that's saying something. It's an easy game to enjoy. I'm probably going to play more and may even replay it after I beat it, who knows. Now, before I head into the reflection and outro segment, there's some things I want to mention. The first time I did a mutant bash, I completed it and then I got funneled into this studio where a couple of masked people come in, give you a bottle of booze and a trophy, push you into a chair to bask in your glory. But it only lasts for a few seconds before they tear the trophy out of your hand and basically abandon you in your chair. It really gives you this feeling of hollowness, really reflected that whole 15 minutes of fame culture you sometimes see on the internet. The whole thing leaves you hollow because it just doesn't last, and once you're out of the eye of the public, there's nothing left for you. Really hit me in a visceral way that I wasn't expecting. Unfortunately, couldn't catch the footage of that bit, so you get some mutant bashing instead. I am really glad that I don't play a lot of these style of open world games. I think the last one I messed around with was Mad Max, maybe Horizon Zero Dawn if you count that. So that's probably a reason I reflect more fondly on this game, while others might not see it in such a good light. So let's talk about the making of with this video. Scripting took a different route than last time. I didn't and still don't really have an outline on how to do all this, since I'm doing it from scratch without having a real set in stone routine, plus I'm still finding my voice. I wrote this one on my Google Docs on my phone for the most part because of my current setup with my PlayStation and TV on the same screen, so writing and playing at the same time was a bit of a chore. Gathering footage for this was also really challenging. Because I got the game from my PlayStation, I had to capture the footage, but I have no capture card. So I just used the share feature on the PlayStation, sent it to my own personal YouTube channel, and then downloaded it from there in order to upload it into the program. Unfortunately, that seems to have come with a lot of problems. For one, I lost my clip of murdering Smeggy due to an internet outage. On top of that, I didn't think to capture more footage of other important bits like the intro and tutorial and other things I wanted to take note of because I was so wrapped up in the game. Also, there seems to have been some artifacting with the upload and download process, but that's fine. A lot of this is my own fault. Editing both the sound and video was a pain. See, I tried to use the other program I was using, but the trial version of it only allowed one export before you have to pay for it. Fair enough, but I can't afford it right now. So I had to switch to some other software, which means relearning everything. Not gonna lie, the first program was a lot easier for me to use, but I'll get over it. Maybe I'll try some other ones over time just to see how they work. I really had a hard time inserting clips this time due to the software changes, so it's all a bit choppier than I would have liked. I am still learning after all, and on top of that, this program crashed a few times which resulted in some lost progress. Overall, I didn't have as much fun making this video due to a lot of changes and complications. I'll get over it. Next time I'll be making an essay about video game burnout. P.S. Cheat code voice guy? I know I've got Overdrive ready. Shut the fuck up about it. Jeez. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, raise the road choker, blow up the sentry turret, worship Smeggy, murder the goon squad, summon an ecopod, and shotgun blast your way into the comments section to tell me how much of a Bethesda shill I am.